Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. This is our weekly Hoops HD report, recording it here live on tape delay at about 9:30 p.m. on Monday, December 7th. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up here by top row by David Griggs and Joby Fortson. Bottom row, right below me, we got Rocco Miller joining us from Bracketeer.org. To his sides, John Titel and John Stalika, who is not pausing yet, while every other school is. We're here to review and recap everything that happened the past week, take a look at what games might possibly happen this week. We had some great games this week, including David number one versus
two.
Baylor.
The first time ever, I believe, that a 1 versus 2 matchup has been canceled the day of the game. But anyway, it's like Chad said, we're going to look back at a lot of exciting action and look ahead to a lot of action that's going to be canceled.
And we're not going to do is preview games that we don't even know are going to be scheduled yet, and they probably will get scheduled. But who knows? What I'm going to do there, though, is start by pulling up on the screen here, if we could do it correctly, our standings page that we look at every week. And if that did work, we should see some SEC standings come up on the screen. If it didn't work, then I don't know, we're probably seeing my background on my computer or something. Is it there?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, guys. Well, to start things off in the SEC, though, and Rocco, let me start with you because the big story in the SEC is Kentucky. Look at that. By the standings right now, 14th place. John Calipari's worst start ever at 1-3. Is it panic time here for the Wildcats?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. You know, the quality of play has not been there this past week. A close loss with Kansas, a game they led most of the way. Not enough warning signs there to really panic. But what we saw yesterday against Georgia Tech was quite a few warning signs, losing by 17 in a game that they just flat out weren't prepared for. It appeared, I think there's some chemistry issues that need to be worked out. Calipari, I think we've talked about this on previous shows, is known for some slow starts, and he's got a lot of freshmen to mesh together with a transfer in Oliver Sarr. That's their starting lineup, 4 freshmen and Sarr. And then you've got Mintz coming off the bench, who also sat out last year, transfer from Creighton. So I think there's just plenty of talent and plenty of coaching pedigree to turn this thing around. But they could use a few games where they're not going to be tested like this so they can work it out. And they've got Notre Dame, I think, coming up later this week.
Yeah, Joe, let me also ask.
Will finish below Notre Dame in the ACC standings. That's scare them.
Joby, my thought heading into this season was teams like Kentucky that are not experienced, that haven't played together, we're going to be the most vulnerable ones this year. And we may just see that playing out here with the Wildcats also.
And also here their outside shooting is pretty abysmal at this stage. Maybe the young kids will develop it, but people just have to play a very solid half-court game against them. That's what Georgia Tech did. And you can shut this team down. And that is not a usual component of Kentucky. And maybe the youth isn't allowing for the opportunity for breaks as much, fast court breaks. There's so much talent. There's so much raw ability that, hey, they're going to pick up some wins in the SEC. And I still would be hesitant to say that this team won't make the tournament, especially while the Georgia Tech game's awful. The fact is they were in the Kansas game, and Kansas is a legitimate top 10 team. They were in that game to the very end, and it was actually a very exciting game. So
they kind of blew it, to be honest.
They kind of blew it. It was the outside shooting. They had the lead, and then they couldn't nail shots from the outside. And it's actually the Kansas game that my comments are reflecting on almost more than the Georgia Tech game. The Georgia Tech, I think, saw what happened in the second half of the Kansas game and applied the same methodology. They'll crack that probably at some point, but they've cost themselves a chance at the 1, 2, 3 line probably that they were eyeing to start this season.
Yeah, if you look at some of these we've got all these metrics on the screen here, the resume-based ones, including Joby, your J&G, a little bit, not really enough data yet and results for those to really be kicking in, but the predictive metrics Look, I mean, Kentucky, Ken Palm's still okay at 37. The BPI and their Saccharin ratings wouldn't even be a tournament team right now.
And remember,
and those are predictive metrics based on how well you play and how that's going to project forward.
At this point, also, because it's a computer thing, I'll add on. Ken Palm is still very heavily preseason biased at this point. Just remember that. Ken Palm, more than I think, we've interviewed Kim Pomeroy. I think at this stage you could say over 50% is historical or projected, combining the historical with it. So Kim Palm, for now, for a team like Kentucky who's fallen flat, should be taken with a little grain of salt.
Well, I think Mr. Stalika, since he circled a different team on the screen, wants to jump in here about the team that had the best week out of the SEC.
Oh,
we're talking about the Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, this would be, in most years, a great week when you're actually playing a team like Oregon out in Omaha and getting a win against a nice top 25 team, and also going to the Roundhouse and beating Wichita State. We'll overlook the little fact that Wichita State is going to be way down this year, but Missouri, they've had a little bit of hot and cold under Kwanzo Martin, and with an experienced roster over the last couple of years, I suppose in some ways they're a pleasant surprise, but not terribly shocking that they would be out to a 3-0 start right now.
Yeah, I think whereas Kentucky's the story of the conference for a lot of wrong reasons, I think Mizzou's the story of the conference for a lot of right reasons. And while we see some good overall records, the majority of this league has been eating at the pastry cart. Not Mizzou, going on the road to Wichita State, who is admittedly dealing with some issues, but still not an easy place to win. They took the fans right out of the game. You had to respect them for that. And beating a really good Oregon team, that was more surprising than anything else. I think that, we talk in the preseason who's going to jump out there unexpectedly. In the SEC, it might be Mizzou. Like, is this a tournament team? Is this a top 25 team?
Titel, there's several other undefeated teams here. Florida finally started playing. They got 3 wins. Ole Miss and Tennessee still haven't played a game. I think you want to talk about another team, though, that's out to a 3-0 start. Am I correct?
We better talk about Georgia because I don't think it's going to last that long. I thought they were going to explode. They lost Anthony Edwards, the #1 overall pick by the Timberwolves last month. Luckily, when you have 3 home cupcakes, you can go 3-0. 2 more winnable games this week. Then Cincinnati flies south on December 19th. So I think that is when they will crash back down to earth. They're doing it with defense, though. 17% from behind the arc is all they allow. That's number 5 in the nation. They got a tiny point guard, 5'10", Xavier Wheeler. No sophomore slump for the sophomore. 17 points a game, leading the nation with almost 11 assists a game. So the trivia question, who's the only guy in the past 25 years to finish a season with double digits in points per game and assists per game? Anybody?
That is hella trivia right there.
John.
I have no.
Hearing no answer, the answer is John Morant a couple years ago.
Wow. All right.
Was I muted? I actually said John.
No, he said Ja. He did say Ja.
I heard Ja in there, but yeah, I think the people talking at the same time, we got drawn out a little bit there. But we got the upcoming schedule there, allegedly, in the SEC on the screen. Some interesting games on the schedule there for Saturday, if they happen, including the bragging right game between Illinois and Missouri, the Florida State matchup, Cincinnati at Tennessee. What's up there? Alabama, Clemson, Auburn, Memphis. Who knows? They'll probably all get canceled.
Missouri better not overlook Liberty, though, because the Flames
right
down compared to what we had expected.
Yeah.
Good point. Colorado, Tennessee coming up tomorrow night here, Tuesday night, a battle of 2 at least power conference teams. If
undefeated.
First game for the season for Tennessee. I think they are scheduled to play. I think they are finally
undefeated. They're undefeeted.
Yeah. Little Apple Classic champions.
There we go. Let's jump over to the Big 12 though, while we're at it, and discuss the team that did not get a chance to play Gonzaga this weekend. Baylor, though, is still there at 3-0, number 2 in the nation in both polls this week. David, let me start with you here. Baylor did get a very good win over Illinois. They kind of took care of them earlier in the week.
Yeah, they did. I mean, that was a close game all throughout, but Baylor kind of stretched it out towards the end. A really good win for them. And again, like they haven't played really any bye games. Like while their other games were against weaker opponents, they've still played an overall strong schedule. I was, God, that would have been so great to see what they could have done against Gonzaga on Saturday. I believe the intent is to reschedule it, or the hope is to reschedule it. I don't know if it'll actually happen or not, but I again am really impressed with this Baylor team. I don't know if they would have beaten Gonzaga. I was thinking that before the beginning of the season, I think I had them as my overall number one. But after seeing them both, I like Gonzaga a little bit more, but emphasis on a little bit. It would have been a hell of a game. And if you look at like what they have coming up, if we can pull up their schedule, it's just that like nobody in the conference has looked anywhere close as to what they have. Kansas high in the rankings, but a little bit disappointing. Texas, a really good story, but they're coming off of a loss to a team I think we all think Baylor would have beaten. Texas Tech, a little disappointing. West Virginia off to a good start, but not anything like what Baylor's done. I mean, I kind of like them as much as I like some of the other teams in this league. I like them the best.
Yeah, as far as Baylor's game, they only right now have one game scheduled for this week, Sunday's game against Texas. Tomorrow night's game that's on the screen there against Nicholls State has already been postponed. Nicholls has had a COVID outbreak. I don't know if they're going to try to get another game in this week with somebody else, so you might see a game show up there. But Titel, first place, though, we've had one conference game. Oklahoma beat TCU. How about those first place Sooners?
If every game gets canceled the rest of the way, we have our conference champion.
All right.
Sooners have looked good. It's been early, but the 4-point road win at TCU on Sunday. Huge game this week. They head to Xavier on Wednesday, assuming it happens. Couple home cupcakes after that. Then possibly the hardest 4-game stretch of any team this year. Texas Tech at home, West Virginia at home, at Baylor, at Kansas. Good luck. The good news, they're not going to lose a lot of close games. They're shooting 83% from the free throw line, number 7 in the nation. And senior Austin Reeves, he loves playing in Fort Worth. 2 of his last 3 games have been at TCU. Last March and then yesterday on Sunday, combined 73 points, 31 of 34 free throws in 2 games, and 15 assists. He can't wait to play at TCU.
This is the content we are here for. I did not know that.
Rocco, I want to ask you about another team here that you see them highlighted in red there. They are not postseason eligible at the moment, although there is still a pending appeal. But knocking the door of the top 25 even. Oklahoma State, nice. They struggled with Oakland in the first half, but they got the win. They're 4-0 now. I've been kind of impressed. They have a nice win at Marquette also earlier in the week.
Yeah, absolutely. So that win at Marquette got a lot stronger over the weekend too. So that, if for any reason they can win the appeal and get eligible, we'll see if that matters. But, of course, this team is highlighted by the freshman phenom kid Cunningham, a very possible number 1 pick in the NBA draft next year. And the kid can just do it all. I mean, he's getting boards, he's scoring, he's getting dishes. And you got a guy like Likely back, the experienced junior to go with Cade Cunningham. They're playing a lot of 2-man basketball. Farron Flavors is a great outside shooter, hasn't really gotten going from the outside yet, only hit 1 of 6 from 3 against Marquette, but they're still able to win that game by 8. I think this team's deep. The freshman, I think Titel talked about him earlier, Matthew Alexander Moncrief, has 2 cousins in the NBA. It's just a loaded, talented team, and it's just a matter of if the maturity level shows up. The Big 12, as we see here, is going to be brutal. So there is countless amounts of tests coming ahead for the Cowboys, but a lot of fun to watch this team play.
Yeah, you see the votes there. 7 out of 10 teams getting votes in the polls, and 5 of them, half the conference in the top 17 in the nation in both polls. Joby, I want to talk about the team, though, that's number 13/number 12 a little bit also here. Texas had another team with a very nice week, wins over Indiana and North Carolina before a close loss to Villanova.
I believe him. I love David, but I actually think this weekend's game with Baylor, Texas matches up. I think Texas might be better than Kansas, and they might be the team now. It's in Waco. But in COVID, it's not like there's a crowd, a huge crowd. There is a little crowd in Texas allowed.
Yeah.
But Courtney Ramey fouling out might have cost them the game against Nova because he was nailing three. When I was talking about Kentucky's woes, that was not the woe. That was not the woes. It seemed like whenever Villanova would get out by 5, Texas would then storm back, and that was the sign. And against North Carolina, it was the same thing. Carolina get out there, and then they nailed the buzzer beater with .1 on the clock against North Carolina to win. But maybe the game, and these are great games because North Carolina, I think, is a legitimate top 15 team. Villanova is a legitimate top 10, maybe not top 5 anymore, but at least top 10 and maybe top 5. You beat an Indiana team who I do believe is a tournament caliber team by 22. I'm there. Texas, I am sold. This is a real team. This is a protected seed level team and maybe more.
Oh, I agree with them being a protected seed. I just don't think they're number one the way that I think Baylor.
Baylor and Gonzaga are in a solar system above everybody else. But Texas, I do believe, is in that next range of 6, 7, 8. Yeah. I really do believe that.
Salika, I got the upcoming schedule here. There's some great games involving Big 12 teams. And even though the ACC Big 10 Challenge cooks off here Tuesday night, tomorrow night, the game of the day might be at 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock Eastern tip between Creighton and Kansas, 2 top 10 teams battling here.
Yeah, it's been a much better year for the Big 12, at least as far as the Big 12 Big East series is gone. Oklahoma State getting the win at Marquette is going to be one example right here. Kansas is going to want a little bit of revenge themselves after losing at Villanova last year. But at the same time, Creighton, who themselves is a top 10 team, if they're able to win at the Fog, look out.
Yeah, and that, I mean, David, there's just some, I mean, if you look towards this weekend, if these games happen, you've got the Texas Baylor game, you've got Richmond, West Virginia this weekend, you got, got in the middle of the week there, Wednesday, I see Providence at TCU, a good road test for Providence. There's a lot of very interesting, intriguing games here. Oklahoma Xavier, we talked about a little bit already, involving this conference.
Yeah, another game, and we kind of have to mention it, although the storyline this year isn't what it normally is. This Iowa State-Iowa rivalry, when you talk about rivalries with that are at a very high temperature, like I think there's Louisville, Kentucky, BYU, Utah, Pitt, West Virginia, when it resumes, Kansas, Missouri. I mean, all rivalries have heat. Some have more than others. Iowa State, Iowa, maybe not, is probably hotter than what anybody outside the state of Iowa realizes. The year that the number 2 team, I think it was Iowa State, the number 2 team in the nation beat unranked Iowa and stormed the court. If you looked at, didn't the bands get in a fight one year? I mean, it's just all kinds of nastiness around this game. I kind of hate that fans aren't going to be there, but I mean, every year, Providence, Rhode Island is another one, but I think you and I always end up watching this game and are like, my God, this is intense.
If it happens, it's not on the schedule yet for this year, but it's a game that they could easily schedule in about 2 days notice, or maybe 2 hours notice.
Yeah, we're talking about we're talking about Providence, Rhode Island, but I don't know. I just wanted to say this Iowa State-Iowa game is not just a regular rivalry game. It is way above average.
Let's jump on over to the ACC here. Another conference with, I think there's 5 top 25 teams. Actually, I think there's 6 top 25 teams, if I'm counting it correctly, with Louisville right there in the top 25 as well. I guess, Joby, this is your conference, you being the ACC guys. So maybe we got to start with you here. And we talked a little bit about North Carolina's loss to Texas already, but I mean, do we want to talk a little bit about Virginia, or do we, who struggled again? I think with Kent State, did they not?
Struggled with Kent State, but then but they were up 45-13 on the St. Francis team that we think is going to win the ACC. Not that that's
good. You could beat the Northeast Conference champion. You could beat a play-in game team. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, we won't pull it on BC. I mean, but my point is, it was a killing. So I don't know what to get with this team. This team needs to gel. Plain and simple. The defense is not quite there to typical Virginia standards, but the talent is. I mean, it is. If they can beat anybody in the country, but it's proven by San Francisco the weakness against Kent State. They're going to a game like a Clemson game, where in past years it wouldn't be an issue for even the Virginia team from last year. It's like, that it'll be a slugfest. We win slugfest. This team might not be able to win all the slugfests this time, and even if they then go and beat Duke, or we'll find out this week, Michigan State.
Well, let me ask. Let's see here, Rocco. Let me go to you and ask you about another team that, at Virginia Tech, after everybody screamed about how great they were, they had that great start. They struggled at home with VMI. Yeah, they got the win, but at the end of the day, maybe it's just going to look like a win win towards the bottom of a team sheet. But a little cause concern there for the Hokies.
Well, yeah, I think at the end you're right. It will just look like a win against VMI at home by 7, but it was a good scare. Sometimes in non-conference, that's not the end of the world. You can teach your team some things from a an ugly win, which that was a little bit of a letdown too. I think Virginia Tech just came off a couple big, high-profile games and not used to having all the attention. I think they're like you told me last week, they're a ranked team now. And I need you to remind me of that because I don't pay attention to rankings.
Virginia Tech, 15th in the nation right there. You see that last column there, yeah.
But as we look forward, I think tomorrow a very intriguing game with Penn State. I'm looking at the list. I think we have 12 of these challenge games left. 2 got canceled today.
Yeah,
but out of there's 3 that are going to get all the attention. I think you'll talk about those in a minute with Illinois, Duke, UNC, Iowa, and Sparty versus UVA. But there are 5, and this game included, that are really going to potentially help shape the bubble later this year. And Virginia Tech gets Penn State. A couple teams we're still trying to learn a lot about. We don't know which way they're going to go. Penn State lost a tough overtime game against Seton Hall, a game they could have put away. So they're going to be hungry trying to get a road win here in Blacksburg. Really intrigued to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, another game that we'll talk about when we go to the upcoming schedule is my Rutgers Scarlet Knights are playing Syracuse at Titel. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the Orange off to the 3-0 start, including very narrowly beating Bryant.
This could be the worst 3-0 team in America. They do have 3 wins, so they get credit for that. But when you're beating Bryant by 1 at home, that's ridiculous. I remember the good old days when this team, all they did is play zone defense and miss free throws. They're actually shooting 76% from the line this year. So I think that is a nice step in the right direction. And they're doing it without Buddy Boeheim. The coach's son, he's missed the last 2 games due to quarantining. But they got a transfer from Illinois, Alan Griffin. You might have heard of his dad, Adrian. He's an assistant coach for the Toronto Raptors. He played at Seton Hall back in the day. Alan's doing great. He's everyone's new buddy. 23 points against Ryder in the win last Saturday. But you mentioned Piscataway on Tuesday. Then they host BC in the conference home opener on Saturday. There's no way this team's winning at the rack, right?
I don't think they are, but they're at BC on Saturday. I think looking at the schedule there, at least on the screen. But Salika, look at those games Tuesday and Wednesday. That is the ACC Big Ten Challenge. It was 14 games. You see Louisville, Wisconsin there, you can cross it off already. It's gone. You see NC State, Michigan, you can cross that one off also. It is also gone.
But we still get Ohio State and Notre. Oh, wrong sport. Never mind.
We do get Ohio State, Notre Dame in the wrong sport, along with, as Rocco mentioned earlier, there's some real big games here: Illinois, Duke, North Carolina, Iowa.
I love that North Carolina Iowa game. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Indiana, Florida State's there's a lot of intriguing games in this list here. And then there's Georgia Tech, Nebraska, David.
Yeah, Georgia Tech, Nebraska. But like a lot of games that while they might not feature teams in the protected seed range or so we don't think, Louisville, Wisconsin canceled. But how about Clemson off to a 3-0 start with some decent wins? Can they keep that going against Maryland? And how about this Clemson-Alabama game?
What a football game. On Saturday, must be football.
Yeah, no. Right. So a big week for Clemson, really.
At a neutral site, just as the football game likely will be on January 11th.
Do we have our national football semifinals this week? Ohio State, Notre Dame, Clemson, Alabama. We might.
Yeah.
Notre Dame at Kentucky also coming up this weekend.
And Wake Forest with a winnable game hosting Presby.
Let me throw this out there to a couple of you. Do we have predictions? Who's going to win ACC or Big Ten? Let me throw it out to Rocco, maybe, and Joby. You have predictions on who wins this challenge?
I'll let Joby go first. I'm going to take a quick glance at the lineup.
Yeah, I'd go Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's just deeper, though the Big Ten did lose 2 games that I thought they would win, in the
games,
cancellation. But, there's enough games like Syracuse-Rutgers. I'm going with you guys, Chad. I mean, it's common sense, on that. And
I love this. It's common sense that Rutgers will beat Syracuse. I love that statement.
I think that it is.
And even like a really strong games, North Carolina at Iowa, it's going to be a great game. But if you're putting a gun to the head, I'm going Iowa. Michigan State, the way they're playing right now, we'll talk about in Big Ten, is playing better than Virginia, even though I think the teams are very equally matched. So I think Big Ten won't be a blowout, but I think the Big Ten.
Also, keep in mind, COVID-19 has already won 2 of these games. I hope they don't win anymore.
Yeah, if COVID wins the challenge, we got problems. Rocco, you want to give me your pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 6-6 seems pretty likely. I do like some of the ACC matchups. I'm really intrigued by Purdue and Miami. But one of the things that's just driving me nuts about some of these games is how far teams are traveling. It just doesn't make sense to me unless they're playing 2 games in these geographical areas. Like, I know North Carolina, Iowa is extremely sexy for TV, but making them fly to Iowa to play 1 game and having Purdue fly to Miami, some of this stuff just makes you scratch your head. Boston College going to Minnesota, another example. But I like some of the ACC matchups. I think Virginia, Duke, Miami, Clemson, Virginia Tech, and Florida State can all win at home. So if one other team comes through outside of those 6, it's a win for the ACC.
All right. So we got an ACC and a Big Ten pick here, or maybe you're right. Maybe it ends up being a 6-6 tie. But Sleeka, let's jump over to the other half of that challenge and the Big Ten and take a look at some of the results, starting things off from the past week here. I guess maybe we should start by talking about Michigan State, up to number 4 in the nation. Had the win over Duke, picked up a win, I believe, against a Detroit team as well, who gave them a bit of a challenge, and beat Western Michigan yesterday, I think.
Well, as much of a letdown as a Detroit would have been, I think you have to give credit to Sparty for finally winning at Duke. I mean, it's not often that Tom Izzo is going to beat Krzyzewski, even with a grand total of, I guess, 0 students that are going to be at Cameron Indoor.
Yeah, David, on the other hand, Wisconsin, great game, but they did fall to Marquette.
Yeah, in a bit of a surprise. And again, you don't want to overreact from the results of one rivalry game. It was a game that we were expecting them to win. It doesn't really change where I think Whiskey's ceiling is or what kind of year I think they're going to have. I didn't think they would go undefeated, and now they're not going to. So, but man, what a finish! An exciting game, a fun game to watch, a well played game that ended badly for Whiskey. Box out! What a Lord!
Titel, Maryland only played 1 game this week. They beat St. Peter's, but yeah, you had some insight into the Terps.
I mean, it's one thing. This is the anti-Syracuse. They're not that they're scheduling hard teams, but that they're winning at home by 18-plus points a game. They're dominating people. They head to Clemson on Wednesday for a big one. Then they host Rutgers next Monday. So we're going to see how they do against very good teams. The offense has been amazing. 43% behind the arc, top 25 in the nation. 64% inside the arc, number 5 in the nation. Brand new star on Hakeem Hart. The reason we never heard of him, he scored 28 points during his entire freshman year last year. Gets his first ever start on Friday. Coach Turgeon picked the right guy. 33 points, 11 of 13 shooting against St. Peter's. A star is born.
Yeah, and Rocco, when we look at this is yet another conference. I think we have 2 or 3 conferences now with 6 teams in the top 25. I think between the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC, that's the and the ACC, that is your entire top 25 these days. And then Michigan, though, right on the doorstep there, 26th in both the polls, and the Wolverines are off to another strong start as well.
Yeah, very impressive beatdown of UCF yesterday, a UCF team who had beaten Auburn earlier in the week. So Michigan passing that test. They did have the scare, a couple Sundays ago against Oakland, but they've coming off a very strong home week with the Ball State and UCF wins. I agree that the Big Ten deserves a lot of these accolades. I think last year we had every team except Nebraska, Northwestern competing for bids. I expect a lot of the same this year. Penn State may be the one variable, but I really like what Coach Ferry, the interim coach, is doing early on. I got to watch the entire Penn State game last night. I think they're running good stuff. They run good defense too. So this is going to be a fight between, I think, probably 7th place through 12th. maybe out of those six teams, maybe we got 2 bids for them. Going to be really interesting because most of these schools have tough non-league games, and then they're going to start playing the bulk of their schedule against each other.
Yeah, and there's some interesting games here. We were talking about the Iowa State-Iowa game. Not on the screen, but my understanding is that with the Louisville-Wisconsin game off, David, I think that Wisconsin is going to get Richmond on Wednesday, from what I'm hearing, which is another fascinating game.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah.
Hey, Chad, it's actually Rhode Island.
Oh, I think
They'll
it's Rhode
host
Island. Okay, they're getting Rhode Island. Okay, well that works as well, though. But they get Fats Russell there.
Richmond whiskey would have been fun, but Richmond Rodeo will be fun too. To kind of echo what you – well, I'll wait till – are we done with this or are we moving on?
Let's move on to the next conference here.
Okay, well, I did just want to say that, like, when you look at the strength of this league, it's obvious that Tim Miles built this league up. And now, like, that he's gone, Nebraska cannot.
There is the buzzer. Let's jump over to the big East.
I'm supposed to get the buzzer because I want to know why the Royals and the Twins are playing in the midst of December.
It was a game to be postponed because of COVID. Come on. Everyone knows that. Stalika, I am going to stick with you, though. We're jumping over the Big East. And your Xavier Musketeers, they won the Gold Star Chili game, correct?
Yes, the Gold.
It's amazing what will happen when you have two players come out of quarantine, not because they contracted COVID, but were in close contact with someone who did. You also get Adam Kunkel, who got an immediate waiver approved from Belmont, so he gave him some much-needed outside shooting, as did Nate Johnson in the crosstown shootout sponsored by Pick a Chili Company, and next thing you know, they're 6-0. They're also hitting their free throws, so they've got a nice test coming against Oklahoma come Wednesday.
Yeah, so Xavier gets that win. You see 3 games up there that got postponed. I don't know why they showed up on the screen. We're not supposed to show there, but they were not 0-0 ties. I don't know how that happened. Ty, when we look at the Big East, there were a fair amount of losses, but we do have a couple this week. Maybe unfortunately for the Big East, Georgetown had a couple of bad losses. But how about Creighton now at 3-0 here?
Yeah, I will not be talking about Georgetown at all.
Okay.
Creighton, very similar to Maryland, undefeated. They're beating good teams or average teams at home by double digits, and they're doing it with offense. They're taking it up a notch schedule-wise, several notches actually on Wednesday at Kansas. But the offense is amazing. Top 7 in the nation in free throw shooting, number 2 in the nation inside the arc from 2-point range. Thanks to when you have a 7-foot freshman named Ryan Kalkbrenner who's shooting 70% from the field, be the big man. Also helps junior point guard Marcus Zagorowski running the show like an All-American, 12.7 assists a game.
And I want to say, Rocco, Seton Hall, is it time for a little panic here? I understand they lost to Oregon, but they lost to Rhode Island, and they should have lost the game to Penn State last night. They had a big comeback to win that one.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they showed just tremendous resiliency.
Okay.
I think Coach Willard signed up for a ridiculous gauntlet last week, playing 4 games all over the country, playing a home game with Iona at the beginning, then went to Kingston, Rhode Island, then went to Omaha, Nebraska, then came back to State College, Pennsylvania in the matter of a week. I think that was a little insane, but congrats to him for going 2-2 because it was looking like a 1-4 start to the season for most of the game last night. But Mamu, just an unbelievable, resilient player. The team, you could tell, feeds off his energy. Put up 30 last night. And, they're getting a great all-around effort. And these types of gut checks are going to help them a lot, I think, when it comes to Big East play and the Big East tournament particularly. So I'm still feeling okay about the Pirates just for the fact that they were able to gut this out last night.
Joe, if we're feeling okay about the Pirates, are we feeling okay about Providence as well? The loss against Alabama. I can't quite figure that out.
Well, it was ugly from word go. The Providence has stumbled out of the gate, and surprising to me. I mean, I'll be the first to admit they were my surprise team, top 3 in the league pick, and it looked good until the season started.
Keep in mind, they also have some parallels.
They haven't looked. Come on. The game even against Fairleigh Dickinson wasn't, in hand until late. I mean, there's concern here, and maybe they'll get it together. Maybe it's because there's some transfers, but I thought that the returning pieces would have been able to settle this team down better than it has. Yeah, it's early, but the signs early are not good.
Yeah, David, though, for the second year in a row, DePaul still is undefeated here. And
I mean, it's just kind of crazy being undefeated, like going into the first week of December here.
But David, seriously, there's the upcoming schedule there. DePaul, actually, I think that's their first game coming up on Friday at Seton Hall. We actually get into conference play over the weekend.
Yeah, how rough is that? Their first game on the road against a Seton Hall team that has some experience, and as Rocco said, is really, really looking for a win. What a rough go for DePaul.
It gets even easier on Monday night. David.
Yeah, and then they go to Villanova. Oh, wow. Well, what's the point? It's DePaul.
Let's jump over to the Pac-12. Rocco, you are a Pac-12 guy, although albeit for being a fan of a Washington team that maybe we should not be discussing. Again, some 0-0 scores coming up there. We see all those cancellations, but I guess, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know where we want to talk to. Let me throw it out there. Who do you want to talk about in this conference? Because I don't know. I mean, do we want to talk Oregon? Do we want to talk about the Stanford of North Carolina Cardinal? I don't know what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought a few things about the league just over the last week. There wasn't like that one big moment that stood out. Oregon, of course, struggled against Mizzou, but they got right after that game, they got LJ Figueroa eligible, and it's a needle mover, as you guys know, watching Big East ball. The guy can flat out score. Came over from St. John's, and also a transfer from Rutgers. Omaruri is finally playing for the Ducks, and he just won Pac-12 Player of the Week. Outstanding performance in the win over Seton Hall. So the Ducks look like they're going to be back on track. They also blew out Eastern Washington today. So they're now 3-1.
Eastern Washington was there at halftime, actually. It was a second.
Eastern Washington was in that game for a little bit. But
yeah, the second half was they dominated there. But USC also had a big test last week, killed BYU by 30, and then just fell short against UConn. So I still don't know what to do with the Trojans quite yet, but they'll get Stanford later this weekend. I think very interesting game between both teams.
Titel, you look at the stands there. Number one, we've got Washington State.
And how about some AP votes there too? I'll let Titel talk, but yeah, Wazoo is worth talking about. I can't wait to hear what Titel has to say.
I'm sorry, Rocco. This is the Washington team that we have to talk about. The Cougs have been amazing. 3-0, great. Bad news, all 3 wins at home by a combined 11 points. So a little Syracusey. They did get a conference win over Oregon State, so that helps. They have 5 winnable games over the next few weeks. So they could be 8-0 when they head to Tempe at ASU on New Year's Eve, which could be very exciting, which normally is not very exciting. They've been getting it done with defense. Only 40% allowed from 2-point range. The star so far on offense, Isaac Bonton, the senior point guard, 18 points a game, good. 11 turnovers in 3 games is a bit much. And the star of the future might be their sophomore forward, DJ Rodman, who, yes, is the father of Dennis Rodman, the NBA Hall of Famer.
I also have to give a shout out.
The best team in Washington State.
Gonzaga's pretty good.
I do got to give a shout out to Stanford, who, because of COVID, can't go back and play home games. They stayed in Carolina after the Maui Invitational of Asheville with 2 E's, and played a true road game at North Carolina A&T. Not only was it the first time that North Carolina A&T ever hosted a Power 5 school, the best of my recollection, that might be the first time a MEAC school ever hosted a Power 5 school. I don't really remember. Maybe it may have happened once or twice before, but and I think it shows you that score there, that you can play these games on the road. It's going to count a little bit better at the end of the day in terms of some metrics. Yeah. And guess what? They still won it in by game style.
And I just love, this is such a great word salad. Stanford went to the Maui Invitational in Asheville, North Carolina, couldn't go back home, so they're playing their home games in North Carolina. Just so much good stuff going on there.
David, the upcoming schedule, there's one game and only one game I think to circle, and that is Saturday's game, the Holy War, if it doesn't get postponed.
Oh, no. There's a second one there, Chad. There is a second one there, and that is the two teams that are 8 miles apart and that have never met in the NCAA tournament there, the Idaho-Wazoo rivalry.
Okay, Idaho-Wazoo. Sleek, anything else you're looking at in the Pac-12 coming up this week?
I just want to know if that's going to be the weekend that Chad and Nate Sherwood are going to be inducted into the Idaho Hall of Fame.
Yes, the Sherwood brothers. Let's go through the remaining conferences. We've got 4 more of them fairly quickly here.
How about some rivalry games? Washington, Oregon, BYU, Utah. Yeah, there's some good stuff down there.
Let's see if USF can get lightning in a bottle again against take down another Power 5 team.
It was a pretty good week, Joby, in the American until Sunday hit. They've been undefeated for the week until then, but I think
and it wasn't just besides the Chili Bowl game. It wasn't just the fact they lost; it's how they lost.
But I think there's two teams I want to talk about. Joby, let me start with you here. The Houston team looked very good once again this week. Nice win over South Carolina.
When I was talking about great defensive teams, I threw out like Texas Tech, Virginia, Wisconsin. Houston deserved to be mentioned. They are awesome. I love watching good defense, and Houston got it. And that and they also have enough offensive power that this team is for real. Once again, we talk protected seed. I think that they, especially given, I think the conference with UConn's departure has a big hole in it to kind of challenge Houston right now. Because Cincinnati's down. I think that Houston, very realistically, is really looking protected seeding because let's say they get 27 games in. They probably won't, but let's say it's 27. Are you going to be shocked if at the end of the year they're 25-2? I won't.
Yeah, I would be. I think they're going to be 26-1 or 27-1.
Sleek, it happened in your backyard, so at least in your state there in Ohio, SMU, and I'm not talking about their blowout win over Houston Baptist, but a nice road win at Dayton, actually, 66-64 on Saturday.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've been able to talk about the Pony Express in basketball, but it wasn't before your typical sellout crowd in what they call the Dayton Decibel Dungeon. But still a nice win for the Mustangs to get in the closing seconds.
Is that really what they call it? Wow.
It is.
But it's not Houston or SMU that's currently occupying the 1 spot in our list there at Titel. It is East Carolina.
Did they win the night?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
They beat Wilmington by 10. It's on the screen.
In overtime.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Pirates? We'll talk about Pirates. ECU's looking good, 4-0. Overtime win over UNCW earlier today, a road win at Charlotte. They have another cupcake coming up on Thursday, and then we could get a matchup of undefeated teams when they head to SMU on December 16th. You think this is blah that they're a bad team? They were terrible last year. They lost 12 of their final 15, so they deserve some props when they finally get it going. They're not going to lose a lot of close games. 84% from the free throw line, number 6 in the country. Star Jayden Gardner, the junior's off to a very hot start, 20 points a game. His complimentary scorer, Tristan Newton, he's nice, 10 points a game. He's not even the best complimentary athlete in his family. His cousin Aaron Jones, one of the best running backs in the NFL, and Aaron Rodgers compliment on one of the best offenses in the league in Green Bay.
Yeah, that's the upcoming schedule in the American. I mean, maybe you're going to circle the Furman Cincinnati game as the best game this week, unfortunately.
Well, here's the funny thing. You want to talk about Cincinnati's last game after the shootout last year. They're hosting Colgate. They're tied. They take a 3-point shot with 5 seconds remaining and then foul the Colgate defender. I mean, are we going to get –
Well, no, John, it was not just a 3-point shot. It was a 3/4 court 3-point shot with 5 seconds to go. And to be fair, he was open.
But Tennessee, Cincinnati would be very interesting to be because first game or one of their first games.
Let's jump over to the Atlantic 10, and I know Fordham, UMass, and St. Bonaventure are all undefeated, but I want to talk about the other undefeated teams. And Joby, let's start with Richmond. Beat Wofford this afternoon, actually Monday afternoon here. It was a 5-point game. I honestly did not see the game, so I can't.
It was a little closer than expected, but Richmond keeps keeping on. I mean, Wofford's got a good program, but they're not the Wofford team that was a 7 seed a few years ago. But still. Who would have thought that, that Georgia Tech beating Kentucky would be killing Richmond's power rating. I mean, I mean that's what world we live in COVID. But Richmond, we've said it all before in these podcasts. They're deep, even with the loss of Sherrod. They're deep. Gilliard's probably the best player in the conference, and yeah, I'll tell you, it impressive, and we'll see upcoming with that game we mentioned earlier. If oh no, they're not playing Wisconsin. Rhode Island is. Yeah. So, but that
was my bad.
no, but
they're playing West Virginia. Though.
Let's put it this way:
they are playing West Virginia. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A team like Houston, a team like Richmond, they need to play marquee teams because of the overall depth of having to play the Fordhams of the world. So the fact they have their win in Rupp and a solid resume, winning even the Wofford game, Richmond is looking good. Just maintain it, Spiders, and you will be wearing white at a minimum in March.
Well, Titel, Richmond is in there at 19 in both polls and just missing the top 25 by a few spots. St. Louis, who is also undefeated in 3-0.
I like them a lot. They have a 4-point win over LSU. It's going to keep looking good all season long, I think. They got 3 more home cupcakes coming up. Then they head to Minnesota on December 20th. We'll see what they're about. They've been ridiculous from long range. 49% from behind the arc, second best in the country, thanks to Javonte Perkins. Last year, conference 6th man of the year. This year, unstoppable as a starter. 23 points a game, 11 of 18 threes, and I still can't believe it. He has not committed a turnover yet. It seems impossible. Lots of winnable games over the next 6 weeks. So they're front-loaded. The bad news is the back end of the schedule. They're going to face Dayton and Richmond twice each during the final 10 regular season games. Depending how those go, they might have to beat both of those teams again in March in the conference tourney just to get an auto bid.
I don't know if they'll be in a situation where they need an auto bid. If anything, don't they sort of need the stronger competition to kind of boost up their resume? Like, I mean, wouldn't they rather play those teams than Fordham?
Depends if they can beat them. Obviously, they've beaten LSU, so maybe the answer is yes.
Yeah, okay.
Rocco, quite honestly, for the rest of this conference, I know Rhode Island did a little bit, but they've got a couple of losses. Dayton with the SMU loss. I haven't seen much now. I did like the bodies heading into the season. They haven't had a chance to play yet. I kind of had UMass as a bit of a dark horse in this conference as well. They haven't played yet. But have you seen anything else beyond Richmond or St. Louis that really turns your head in this league?
Well, I was actually going to mention Rhode Island. I think after the 0-2 start, 2 tight losses against both the Sun Devils, not a bad loss, and Boston College, we'll see what happens with them. But they've dominated. They beat South Florida by 16. They beat the Dons, San Francisco Dons by 13, and then they beat Seton Hall by 13. If Seton Hall turns their season around, and San Francisco has been blowing teams out here in the West, we'll talk about them in a minute. Rhode Island now with this opportunity all of a sudden at Wisconsin, and credit to David Cox for getting that game scheduled in less than an hour after the Wisconsin-Louisville game was canceled. We're talking about a brand new Rams resume just like that. And I think the Nets actually going to like these blowout wins they're getting against top 100 programs. So we'll see how they do at Wisconsin. And then they get Western Kentucky on the road on Sunday. So these guys are going everywhere playing whoever they need to get a bid. So you got to keep your eye on the Rams.
Right, and there's the rest of the week's schedule. I don't know if there's anything else to mention other than those games that we just did. So let's jump over to the West Coast Conference.
NKU Dayton would have been fun last year, but both teams are pulling this year.
If Northern Iowa hadn't have started off so awful, the Richmond Northern Iowa game would be,
Yeah.
Stalika, we have the Zags. They are the number 1 team in the nation. They're the only team in this league to receive any votes, and they did not. Well, let's talk about the game that they did play this weekend and their win over West Virginia, I guess.
Oh, nice win out in Indy, but unfortunately they weren't able to, I guess, play the big one come Saturday.
No, they weren't, and that leaves us with San Diego still hasn't played any games. Titel, there's one other undefeated team up there, Santa Clara, also according to these standings at first place, by the way.
When you play 4 home cupcakes, you better win them all, which is what they did. 2 more cupcakes this week. They head to Boise on December 15th. We'll see if they're legit or not. Great interior defense. 35% allowed from 2-point range is number 5 in the nation. Think about it. They could be 10-0 when they head to Gonzaga 1 month from today, and they're still going to be a double-digit underdog, even if they're 10-0. The offense runs through their senior power forward, Joseph Brankich. Unbelievable. 19 points a game, 7 boards a game. He gets to the free throw line about 10 times every day. If he keeps that up, he might help Coach Herb Sendek get 19 more wins this season, which would give him 500 for his career. Unbelievable.
A quick update. It's not on the screen there yet. Just when finals record this, Loyola Marymount another loss. They lost to UC Santa Barbara tonight. So while they look pretty good in a couple of games against Minnesota, they are now 2-3.
The Gauchos a pretty good Big West team, but we'll talk about them on Wednesday. How about I still think the Dons are a story. I still think that they got a high ceiling and they could have a big year.
BYU is the team I want to talk about. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was going to say they had a really good week. I mean, they beat a pretty decent St. John's team, and while Utah State probably isn't a tournament team, this was a rivalry game that held up even in front of a mostly empty arena. It was still electric in there. Some of these Beehive rivalry, well, BYU Utah in particular, but BYU Utah State also always a fun game.
Yeah,
but
Joey,
go ahead.
Joe, I was going to say it's a fascinating week for BYU hosting Boise and Utah this week.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
And Boise's not a bad team, not an awful team.
Boise's not. Well, Boise took a stumbling loss, as I remember, out of the gates. But I would think BYU is focused on Saturday, so watch out. You don't look ahead too much, just because it's always something when the holy war goes on the hard court. So, but BYU, I saw that USC BYU game, and it was my first time to really be able to see BYU play, and obviously it left me with not a very good impression. So I'm worried about BYU. They have that height, Harms, et cetera, but boy, if a team gets moving quick, they look slow. And the lack of Jared Hawes I think if Hawes was still there, they wouldn't be as slow. Ooh, that we'll see if it's a one-off, but I worry it's not.
Yeah, Rocco, I see a couple games up here that they're not going to happen as scheduled, at least. Long Beach at San Francisco, Sacramento at Santa Clara. I don't know if they're going to play those games in Santa Cruz as well, or if we've even heard what the plan is, but they can't play home games still, correct?
Correct. Yeah, San Francisco's got a plan, I think, to play the Long Beach game in Santa Cruz, and Santa Clara has already used that facility. It's a nice facility out there. The G League Warriors play there, so hopefully they can keep doing that. Hopefully the rules don't keep shifting every week, which is actually almost inevitable. But one way or another, if Coach Golden is willing to take his team to Connecticut for 4 games and to Reno, and then go down to – he had to actually play at Cal Poly on Friday instead of here, he's going to find a way to get these games played. So I wouldn't worry about San Francisco. But, yeah, coming up this week as well, Santa Barbara and Loyola Marymount are going to do a flip, and they're going to play at LMU this weekend. And then I think the Cal Bears got to take on both Pepperdine and San Francisco. So important for both Pepperdine and San Francisco to make sure they beat Cal. Not an easy – it's a laughable game because Cal's at the bottom of the Pac-12, but it's not an easy win. They play tough defense, and San Francisco's got to play them in Haas Pavilion, so that'll be interesting.
One more conference we want to hit here, probably fairly quickly. It is the Mountain West Conference, where David, we do have San Diego State actually in the.
I'm so glad you're going to me for the Mountain West. I can't. I've been waiting all night long.
The conference hit by all kinds of postponements. San Diego State did pull out a narrow win actually over Pepperdine on Sunday.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they struggled as much as they did. I really like the San Diego State team. If you were to put together an all-star team with the other 10 teams, I still don't think they would be as good as San Diego State. The way the league's looking up, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But, yeah, I know this league has a lot of teams in it that are struggling to get games in. 3 haven't played at all. Fresno only playing the 1 game. So, and again, UNLV probably wishes they hadn't played any as poorly as they've played.
Yeah, I was going to say, UNLV picked up the win at Kansas State on Saturday. I think it was more of an indictment of how bad Kansas State is than actually UNLV being anything very good in that game. It was not a very pretty game, quite honestly.
Yeah, and San Diego State cracking at least the AP poll, they probably belong in both. They'll be in both by the end of the year, I think.
Titel, maybe the best week this week goes to Wyoming, picking up wins over Incarnate Word and at Oregon State.
Yeah, I just don't know which is more embarrassing, losing at home by 2 points to Texas Southern or beating Incarnate Word at home in overtime. Both pretty sad. They do have 3 winnable games this month to finish non-conference play. They open up with back-to-back home games versus UNLV and versus UNLV because they're doing back-to-backs this year. New coach Jeff Linder, he's getting it done. He's not the hunted. He likes the hunters. He's got junior Hunter Maldonado averaging 12 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals a game, and junior Hunter Thompson averaging 11 points per game.
Well, we believe the correct answer is the win over Incarnate Word because there is the 3-bid SWAC we were talking about on Under the Radar on Wednesday.
Yeah, there's the upcoming schedule. We already talked about the Boise State BYU game. I just don't really know that there's much else to really circle in this week with San Diego State not playing. So.
Oh, they're not. So so the Arizona State's game's off. Okay.
Oh no, you're right.
Oh,
They're
that's
on
happening.
Thursday. Okay,
That's the biggest game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That is the big game. San Diego State, Arizona State.
Oh, I was going to say, well, it's so hard to keep up with everything.
It'll probably be canceled anyhow.
Yeah.
Enters the fray, it distracts you from everything.
Yeah. Well, with a weaker conference, that's a big game for San Diego State to try and get, the resume that they need to get a protected seed. So.
On that note, I do want to let's move over to final thoughts here. Go through each of you for any other comments about anything that you saw so far this season or anything else you want to discuss. And Joby, let me start with you.
Yeah, no, as we discussed, Big Ten, SEC Challenge, Big East, Big 12 is playing. These are very important games given the lack of out-of-conference games this particular season. This is very important for the connectivity. If all of a sudden, Rocco and I are saying, 6-6, if one conference pops out and goes 10-2, 9-3, it will have dramatic effects long-term on that conference's ability to have bids because it's an echo effect. Oh, North Carolina lost to Iowa and Virginia lost to Michigan State. So then when Virginia beats Clemson, it's not as good a win because Clemson only it's a domino effect that if you are a Big Ten fan, you better be rooting for the Big Ten. And if you're an ACC fan, you better be rooting for the ACC because there just aren't as many opportunities out of conference with the 20-game schedules in conference to be able to prove yourself as a conference for the power ratings, the net, et cetera.
Do I even have to, as a Rutgers guy, do I even have to root for Indiana?
You have to root for Indiana.
Okay, I just want to confirm that. Rocco.
And you know what? And you know what? Galen has to root for you.
Yes. Okay. Rocco.
Yeah, a couple quick ones. One, just a quick shout out to Arkansas freshman Marcus Moody. He won SEC Freshman of the Week, 21 points, 8.5 rebounds in 2 games last week. But I think this guy is going to be one of those players that just barnstorms through his 1 year of college and ends up in the NBA next year. Eric Musselman's just recruited just an embarrassment of riches in terms of transfers and a couple freshmen like Moody. Really looking forward to seeing Arkansas play some better competition as well. They've beaten a couple nice Conference USA teams, but bigger games are coming. And then also just going back to Texas, what we've worried about under Shaka the last 4 years is getting over the hump and winning some of these big games and these big moments. They go out to Maui. I know it wasn't in Maui, but it was full of the same 8 teams that were originally supposed to go there. A miracle that it all worked out in that fashion. Texas was in their typical situation at the end of the game 2 different times in the tournament. First time in the opener against Davidson. Second time in the North Carolina championship game, which, by the way, was remarkable. And Matt Coleman came through with a game-winning shot. It's basically a lot of the same guys back, plus they had a 5-star center in Greg Brown, who's just a tremendous prospect as well. To me, just psychologically, even though Texas fell a little short against Villanova, the way they were responding in the moments, even yesterday against Nova, showed me that this Texas team is now, in my mind, at least for the time being, away from like kind of that, are they going to slip all the way out and be a bubble team, or are they an upper echelon team? I think they really made their statement, like Joby was saying earlier, and they're going to be around in the mix for a protected seed, if not better, this year. It was really awesome to see that for Shaka and for all the players that have gone through a lot of tough times there in that program.
Yes, that's the champions of the Maui Invitational in Asheville, as Bill Walton taught us, is Asheville with 2 E's. Salika.
I'm going to go on the radar and also below the radar here. I mean, tonight Arizona is blowing out Northern Arizona. They started the game off with a 15-0 run, but that was not even half of what happened down in Athens, Ohio. The OU Bobcats had a 40-0 run against Cleveland State. I mean, this has to be mentioned, not just under the radar, but also on the main podcast here en route to a blowout win against Cleveland State.
I believe that was an NCAA record 40-0.
It was.
It is.
Titel.
So Chad has been good about mentioning along the way the teams that have not played a game yet. We discussed 10 conferences tonight. There's 11 teams in those 10 conferences who have yet to play a game this season. DePaul, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Temple, the Bonnies, UMass, Fordham, Colorado State, New Mexico, San Jose State, and San Diego. I don't know if any of them are going to make the NCAA tournament, but conference tournaments, some of them end in less than 3 months. So I just hope these teams can get competitive, get on the court, get healthy, because the clock be ticking.
My understanding is its current rule is 13-game minimum to even be eligible for the NCAA tournament. I think it's going to be tough for teams to miss that.
It's 13 games, Chad, but it's also 4 Division I out of conference games minimum. So they're going to have to find teams to play. And
wait. But what about like a Patriot League then, David?
That I don't know, but like when they laid out the parameters, that was what was communicated to at least the schools that I know of.
Okay, well, maybe
praying that Army or Navy wins it.
Yeah, we'll look at that a little bit more as to whether or not getting less than 4 non-conference games.
That's actually unless the Patriot is just going to cling on to its one auto bid.
Well, okay, so you're talking about for an at-large bid, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, for an at-large bid, you have to have 4, but I think to be eligible at all, you have to have at least 13 games.
Yeah, you do. Okay. I believe that's right. I don't know what's right anymore. We normally sort of know what we're talking about, but this year we have no idea what we're talking about. But kind of to build on something that Titel said, it's just that one of the things that's been sort of fascinating is how fluid the schedule has been. Most of the time to get a basketball game scheduled, it might be weeks or months of negotiations over how many tickets do you get, how do you split the television money, is there a return game? If there is a return game, how do we split that television money and tickets? And you could talk to a team for 4 or 6 or 10 weeks and then have it fall apart. To go from that to seeing games being scheduled within a matter of hours and have it resembling some of the non-revenue sports. If we take anything away from this, I would like to see more of that. Let's just play games to get games in. And because a lot of the teams have been able to get a lot of the games. And having said that, for the teams that haven't been able to play or that have had a lot of the games that they were counting on played canceled, now that we're getting in the conference play, it's just, will they have open parts of the schedule or season to get games in that they need? Because you need out-of-conference games, like what Joby said and like what Titel said, to kind of that's what separates the league, and that's what allows for teams to be evaluated. So you kind of hope that happens. And lastly, Chad, are we ready for the hottest thing on the internet?
Yes, David has a new feature. Allegedly, it's called Hot Takes. But
David's
David,
hot take.
Okay,
I am a genius, and I need to share my insights with you to close every podcast. So let's get it up here. I believe it is on the screen. This is this week's hot take. Look at this, Chet. The movie Hoosiers. That is this week's hot take. I am tweeting that out right now.
That's a good movie. A very good movie. But David, what does it have to do with anything recent?
What do you have against the movie Hoosier? That's my hot take. The movie Hoosiers. I mean, what's not to like about it?
I think you got to put a little more effort into these next week, David. We want something a little more relevant, maybe.
Wait, is the movie Hoosiers not relevant? Didn't it win?
I'll tell you what, I can't do this anymore. On behalf of John Titel, Joby Fortson, Rocco Miller, you can check him out at bracketeer.org as well, John Salika, and I don't know what the heck David is doing over there, but I don't think I really care anymore. I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.